I really don't know how they do it. The brave men and women of American law enforcement, how they simply put on that uniform every single day, put that Sam Brown belt on, put that badge on, and their bulletproof vest, and go out there to protect all of us. Why? Because for many, they just don't know if they're going to come home alive after that shift. They are on the front lines every single day for every single one of us. And in the last few years, the violence against police officers and the lack of political support they enjoy has made the situation untenable. The figures are shocking. We have seen a more than 100% increase in officers killed in the line of duty, from 128 a year to last year, 264 peace officers killed in the line of duty. And it's not an accident. It is part of a political movement. Whether it's the violence across America from Black Lives Matter, or whether it's the defund the police demonstrations across the country, this is an orchestrated attempt to undermine those who keep us safe. And incredibly, now the new administration is blaming the Republicans, is blaming those who have stood by the police for the incredible conditions they find themselves in. Let's just remind the world which party it is that truly wants to undermine the police. Here is a little selection of Democrat politicians telling you what they really think.
I will never co-sign on funding a police department that continues to brutalize us. And I will never stop saying, not only do we need to disinvest in police, but we need to completely dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department.
So yes, I support the defund movement. Yes, I support a radical reimagining of community safety and public safety, which means reallocating.
We will be moving funding from the NYPD to youth initiatives and social services.
And it may sound strange, but many affluent suburbs have essentially already begun pursuing a defunding of the police.
The Minneapolis Police Department is rotten to the root. And so when we dismantle it, we get rid of that cancer.
That is the Democrat Party, people who wish to defund or abolish the police. How bad is the situation? Can we do something to recover? We're going to dedicate the whole episode of the Gorka Reality Check to exactly that question. And we're going to start with an American hero, a man who knows better than most what it takes to keep America safe. He is a hero to American patriots, not just in New York, but across the country. He is the author of this superb book, Leadership. I like to call him America's Mayor, Rudy Giuliani. Mayor Giuliani, welcome to the Gorka Reality Check.
Thank you, Sebastian. How are you?
I'm very well. You don't need introduction. You are the prosecutor who took down 5 mafia families after September the 11th. You fought Al-Qaeda. You kept New York safe. You helped rebuild New York. Will you talk to us about your love of the American law enforcement officer and how bad their situation has become in the last 2 years, Mayor Giuliani?
Well, let me begin with that. Actually, it's the worst I've ever seen. You're absolutely right. I love police officers and firefighters. It goes back probably to my childhood. 4 of my uncles were police officers. One was a firefighter. I grew up with them. Then I was a prosecutor for most of my life. So I worked very, very closely with the New York City Police Department in particular, with the FBI and the other agencies. And then I had the honor of being mayor, who runs the police department. And I was more active than most because of my career in law enforcement. There are no better people in this country than the people who put on uniforms, whether it's police, fire, military. because as you pointed out earlier, Sebastian, while we're home, hopefully enjoying ourselves and leading peaceful lives, they're the reason we're doing it. So when that, I can't even say her name, I have no idea why she's in Congress, said that there shouldn't be a police department in Minneapolis. In Minneapolis, crime is going through the roof. Record increases in crime. People are dying. This isn't a game. I mean, people die as a result of not having enough police. When I became mayor, I inherited a city that averaged 2,000 murders a year for 4 years in a row. That's crazy. That's 8,000 people were killed in 4 years. That's wartime numbers.
When we look at this movement, Mayor Giuliani, explain to our viewers what happens when, A, you defund the police, when you don't give them political backing from the mayor's office, whatever the city is. Beyond the police officers who suffer, who suffers the most in terms of the explosion in crime? Is it the well-to-do? Who actually bears the brunt?
Well, let me give you a statistic from New York that holds true in almost every American city, pretty close to the similar. 75% of the people arrested and convicted for murder in New York, roughly 75% are African American. 70% of the people killed are African American. 70%. So just think of it, if you get 100 more murders, that's 70 more African Americans that were killed. We have a mayor who defunded the police. He says he's a Democrat, but he's certainly a socialist, and going to Cuba on your honeymoon maybe means you're even more than a socialist. And he's been the worst mayor in the history of this city, and I think pretty much regarded as one of the worst mayors in America. So he defunded the police. He took $1 billion out of the police department. Last year, he had a record increase in homicide, record. Never, no other mayor ever had such a large increase in murder and shootings. And then he defunds the police, and of course this year is a horror show. And police officers are being attacked in record numbers. But that increase in shootings and in murders, 70, 80% of the time involves an African American. So when I reduced crime by murder by 60, 65%, I saved more African American lives than any mayor in history. They were the beneficiaries, 8 out of 10. So I took it down from 2,000 roughly to 600, 500, 600. Bloomberg then took it down to 300. So 70% to 80% of the beneficiaries there were people in the African-American communities, and those communities started to flourish. Harlem was a crime center when I took over. It ended up being a growing, nice community. Of course, it was a crime center because it was basically bossed by African-American Democrats who didn't do anything for them, watched it get worse, and became multimillionaires. I mean, nobody ever asked, how did Charlie Rangel become a multimillionaire? How did David Dinkins become a multimillionaire? I mean, they made a lot of money, and they did nothing but watch their community rot.
Mr. Mayor, you, along with the people you hired as commissioner with Bratton, with the superb Bernie Kerik, you turned it around. My wife lived in New York in the 80s. She knew what a hellhole it was. Under your leadership and their execution, it became safe. It became a jewel in America. How crucial was in that approach, how crucial was the broken windows policy and a zero tolerance of low-level crime in actually affecting the culture of crime in New York?
It was very, very important. I mean, there were two major things techniques that brought crime down. One was CompStat, which is heavy use of statistics, and the other, equally as important, was using the broken windows theory. And, you know, when you say broken windows theory, you say, why are you spending time on people who are toll jumpers or toll evaders? And yeah, that seems like a relatively minor crime. Well, about half those people, when we started doing it, were wanted for serious crimes. And we caught a serial killer one time because we had just arrested him for evading the toll, and we wouldn't have had his fingerprints had we not done that, and he probably would have gone on and done 4 or 5 more murders before we caught him again. So these things are practically important. When I got rid of the squeegee operators, half of them were wanted for violent crimes. But then, in addition to that, it builds up a respect for the law. You can bring down murder all you want. If somebody comes out in the morning and sees homeless people on the street, they see graffiti all over the place, and they see people who threaten them, make them feel fearful, they're never going to accept the reduction in crime. And you have to do 2 things. You got to, let's call it, you got to work on the big picture and the small picture. If you just work on the big picture, yeah, you'll get statistical reductions, but you'll have a frightened population. If you just work on a small picture, you have too many murders.
Mr. Mayor, I think all New Yorkers are indebted to you for what you did for New York. I think most of them, on a sensible day, if they were allowed to speak their mind, would want you back. And American patriots, since last November, outside of New York and everywhere, owe you a debt, a severe debt of gratitude for what you have been doing, along with Bernie Kerik and Jenna Ellis and Rudy and Joe DeGeneva and Victoria Tansing, fighting for the truth. They're trying to destroy you because you are a truth teller, you're a patriot. And right now, I want to thank you, and I want to put a request out to everybody watching the Gorka Reality Check. This man is under attack. They want to strip him of his law license. Please go to this website, Rudy Giuliani Freedom Fund. He turned New York around. Let's support him now. God bless you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for what you are continuing to do.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.